Hi, thanks for joining me in another episode of Why Not Go. I'm Maggie and I'm in my little tiki room where I go to do my memory lane videos. And I'm uploading this video today on Sid Vicious and how I talked to him after the viciouswhitekids show in London. I'm uploading it today because today's a sad day. Today, February 2nd, 1979 is when he passed away. He had just gotten out of Rikers Island, I think for the second time, and he overdosed that night. He got out of jail, I think February 1st, and he passed away February 2nd. So it's a sad day. He was only 21. Nancy, of course, died before that, October 2nd, and she, of course, he was accused of I think second-degree murder, and he was in jail for a while, and then he got out. I think Malcolm bailed him out, if I can remember correctly, and then he went back into jail for 7 weeks because he got into a fight with Patti Smith's brother at a club. And then when he came out of prison the second time, that's when he OD'd. So it's a sad anniversary, and I wanted to pay homage to Sid Vicious on this day. And and one of the reasons why I'm doing this video is because I got so many nice compliments on my Sex Pistols on Tour video, and I mentioned in that video that I didn't get a chance to talk to him at the Tulsa show because he walked off with a transvestite supposed drug dealer, and they went off into a corner of the club. But I did talk to him after the viciouswhitekids show about 6 months later. So that's why I wanted to do this video, because I had lots of people asking me how that happened. So I'm gonna, like the last video, and I'll put a link in the description if I can figure out how to do that. I think I can. I'll put a link on how to access that video, because this is kind of a companion video to that one. And I also, if you look on my rock playlist, I have, if you're a Sid Vicious fan, I have a video on Max's Kansas City. I went there a few months ago in New York. The location, now it's a Korean or Asian restaurant, and I walked through there, and that's where Sid Vicious did his last live performance in New York. I think that was September 29th. So, so I'll rewind. My last video, it ended, I got back after seeing the Sex Pistols in January of 1978, and my mother was very upset, as I said in the video. I survived the Kleenex box beating that I got when I got home, and yeah, she was very upset. I don't think she would have been that upset if I had seen the Sex Pistols maybe in LA, but the fact that I was using my kind of allowance college money that they gave me to buy tickets to see, to fly to see them in Texas and Oklahoma, and motel rooms and all that stuff, they were pretty upset. She kind of cheered up, I think, a few days later when I told her they broke up. Of course, I was very upset, but I think that cheered her up a little bit. Yeah, she didn't. She was very upset. I grew up in a family. My mother was older. She was an older mother. She was born in 1916. I was born in 1958. So she didn't grow up with rock and roll. She was, I think, 20 in 1936. So I was kind of the black sheep of the family. I had 3 older siblings, and none of them went to rock concerts. My family was kind of conservative. They weren't religious, overly religious or anything, but they just, no one in the family ever liked rock music like I did. So I not only liked rock and roll, but I liked a band called the Sex Pistols, which she couldn't even utter the name. She just called them that awful band. So I was going to college and living in Downey, a suburb of LA. And I wasn't doing well in college, and it was nothing to do with punk rock. I just, I wasn't doing well for a lot of reasons. I was studying the wrong thing. I was studying what I thought my parents wanted me to study. They both had jobs in the medical field, so I tried chemistry and biology, and that was all a disaster. And for the first time in my life, I was getting D's, and it was just awful. And I didn't know what to do, and I started skipping class. I started going to the shopping mall, telling my mother I was going to class, and I'd spend the day either at the movies or going to a shopping mall. I had to go to one further away from home. I couldn't go to the local shopping mall because I might run into her. So it wasn't a good time in my life, and I think the pressure of it, I developed an eating disorder, and back then you didn't even know what those were, and it was called bulimia, but I didn't know at that time, and I was sort of binging on cakes and ice cream and gaining weight, and so it wasn't a good time. And so by the spring of 1978, and speaking of eating disorder, this is just sort of a side note, but there was a very famous person who lived a few blocks away from us who had an eating disorder of anorexia, and they lived in the better part of Downey, and that was Karen Carpenter, and that's so sad. She passed away from that, from anorexia. She passed away in 1983. She went to my high school. I didn't know her, but she was older than me, but I always liked the Carpenters, and I thought she had a great voice, and I love the fact she played drums. She used to play drums in the Downey High School band, so that was kind of sad. So she was a few blocks away with anorexia, and I had bulimia. So when my friend Sue, my friend who I went to the shows with, when she said, "Hey, you're not doing well in college," and I said, "Yeah, that's an understatement. All my siblings just sort of sailed through college, and I was shipwrecked, so to speak. I was in fact, the last semester I didn't even go to class, so I got all F's, so I ended up flunking out. But anyway, she said, "Oh, you're not doing well in college," and she was older than me. She had already graduated. And she said, "Why don't we move to England? We both love English bands. We love the Sex Pistols, and it would be fun to live over there." We had no idea how long we were going to stay. I liked LA bands. I liked the punk scene. We used to go down to the Mask, which is now kind of a legendary club in Hollywood. And I liked a lot of the bands. I liked X, and there was a band called the Screamers that I really liked, the Alley Cats. But my heart was kind of in London and English bands. It probably had to do with loving the Sex Pistols. And so I said, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Because I didn't know what to do after I flunked out of college. I'd have to tell my parents, and so I thought it was a good time to take a break and go live over there. So we got, I think we flew over there in June of 1978, and right away we got jobs. I got a job at Topshop, and she got a job, I think because she had a degree, she got a job at like a technical magazine. Finding a place to live wasn't as easy as finding a job. It was looking for a flat. I'd never looked for an apartment even in America, but looking for a flat in England. I remember looking through the ads, and they would say SC, and I said to Sue, what is that SC? And she said, I think it means self-contained. And I said, oh my God, you mean the flats aren't self-contained? We're gonna have to share a toilet with like strangers? And that's exactly what happened, because the expensive flats were self-contained. So we ended up getting a bed sit, which was fine. I think it was near Earl's Court somewhere. And we got a bed sit. It was a room with 2 twin beds, and I think it had a sink in the corner and a fridge. And then we had to share the tub and the toilet with other flats or bed sits. But I was really happy. I loved it right away. I didn't care. I remember we had to save up our 10p coins, because you had to put, they had meters to get the hot water. So if we had to take a bath, we had to put 10p coin, I think it was 10p coins in the meter to get the hot water. But I loved it. I loved London right away. And so we started working. I was working at I got a job at Topshop, and that was like very glamorous to me, because I think the only job I had before that was working at Jack in the Box in Downey. I was the person that said, would you like to add an apple turnover with that order? Of course, nobody ever did, but that was the only job I had ever had, was fast food. So when I got a job at Topshop, I thought, wow, this is great. It was a big location. Topshop was kind of like, what H&M is today, or Forever 21. And it was a big location at Oxford Circus. You went down a big escalator, and this is just a little side note. It does tie in with Sid Vicious, because I did mention Topshop when I talked to him, which is kind of funny. But I after a few months at Topshop, I actually got promoted, and people might find this interesting. I'll just put this in. And I was manageress, that's what they called it back then, of a boutique called Howie Diffusion, and it was a designer called Paul Howie, and that was his kind of more cheaper line. And I was the manageress of his boutique and Topshop. And anyway, his wife was a woman named Lynn Franks, and Lynn Franks is actually a very famous person today. She was the person that the character on Absolutely Fabulous, that show, was modeled after the character Adina, I think. I don't know, I didn't watch the show. And so she was kind of, my boss was the Topshop floor manager, but it was also Lynn Franks, and she was very intimidating. She would come in and check on me unannounced every so often. She was very businesslike. She didn't, I'll show a couple pictures here. She didn't smile much. But you know, she was okay, and I had a good work ethic, so I got along fine. I think I had a clothing allowance too, which was very exciting, where they wanted me to promote his clothes, so I got to get every month I'd get a certain amount of free clothes. So that was fun. So, and then what happened was, I think the viciouswhitekids show was in August, and right around that time, Sue had to go back to LA because her father was really ill. He ended up passing away a short time afterwards. So she was in LA for a few weeks because of that, and I was alone in London, but I loved it. It was like, it's so funny. I mean, I grew up in a nice middle-class home, and I didn't have to work as long as I was going to college full-time, but I was so unhappy probably because I wasn't studying what I should have been studying, something more maybe artistic. I actually did end up going back to college in the 80s, and I got a degree in English literature, which I loved, and I got good grades then, and I still love to read, so that was a happy ending with my college. But anyway, yeah, it's funny, and I'm living in a bed sit, sharing a toilet and a tub with strangers, but I was so happy, and I love my job at Topshop. And we started going out and seeing bands, and we ended up staying in London for 2 years, the summer of '78 to the summer of 1980. And I loved that time in London. It was different than I thought it would be, because when we got there, I just thought the punk bands would be kind of similar to the LA punk bands, but they weren't. It was like, London to me was like on a whole nother level. Not that LA was bad, but it was just a whole other level of just great music. And a lot of the bands that were starting around that time, they were calling it post-punk. And I remember thinking, like, God, it was just, I thought punk was still going on, and now we're, in post-punk. But, London moves fast. It's such an exciting place, or it was for me back then anyway. And some of the bands I loved, like Joy Division, that was my favorite band during that time. And when I say favorite, it's like, to me, the Sex Pistols are always like up here, and the other bands are, they're close, but the Sex Pistols are up here. But I love Joy Division, and what was so interesting about that time was that there were so many bands that were influenced by the Sex Pistols and started because of the Sex Pistols, like Joy Division, like Susie and the Banshees, like Generation X, or The Fall. Killing Joke. They were influenced by the Sex Pistols and started because of them, but they didn't really sound like them. The people were so creative; they had their own individual sound, And I thought, like Joy Division, I thought they had such a great sound, and you wouldn't think they started because of the Sex Pistols, but they did. I loved that band. So it was great. We started going out to shows right away. And then, as I said, Sue had to go home because her father was ill, and I was alone. I was fine. I loved it. And I used to get the papers every week, Sounds, NME, and Melody Maker. But I think the Vicious Whitekids, I think it was a last-minute show. I don't think it was in the music papers. I think I just happened to see a little blurb or a paragraph in like the daily paper. I think it was the Evening Standard that said Vicious Whitekids, Sid Vicious, is playing at the Electric Ballroom tonight. I think it was the same day that I saw the little article or blurb, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to go to that, So I'm so glad that I did. So it was August 15th. And it was a great show, and I'll play a little. It was Glenn Matlock, Steve New, and they already had a band called the Rich Kids. I guess that's why they called it Vicious Whitekids. And then Rat Scabies from the Damned was on drums, and so yeah, I went down there and got there early. So I'll play a little clip here from an interview that Glenn Matlock did, where he talks about that gig and how it came about.
A little side thing, yourself and Sid and Rat Scabies, and I think Steve as well was involved with, was it the Vicious Whitekids, that one-off gig, that thing that people still talk about? What's your memories of that?
Oh, we did it for a laugh more than anything else. Sid lived around the corner from me. The Pistols thing had broken up, not only for me, but also for him and the other guys. At that time, we were sitting next to each other in my local pub. He said, people said, think we're enemies, but here we are sitting together. What can we do about it? I said, I don't know. I said, I know. Why don't we try and do a gig together just for a laugh? And he went, oh, that's a good idea. Who's going to play? And I said, well, we could get Rat in, and Steve's pretty good. He said, the thing is, you're a bass player and I'm a bass player. I went, well, put it this way. He said, I'm not going to sing. He went, well, who's going to sing then? And I said, well, how about you sing and I play bass? And he went, oh, all right then, I get it. That was say on the Monday of one week, made a few calls, and then the Monday of next week we had a couple of days rehearsals, and then we did the show. It was just a one-off thing, and it was all covers. Went down well. We had a full house at the Electric Ballroom. I remember Blondie being there, which was kind of ironic considering what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
As well as my record. And that was that. But the funny thing was, I was talking to this guy, Rob Dickens, who was head of Warner Chappell Music, and then he's run more WEA in Europe, apart from America. And many years later, I went to pitch him something, and he went, "Well, that's all right, then. I don't know." He said, "Do you know what, though? The most exciting thing you ever had?" I said, "Well, the Pistols." He said, "No." I said, "What then?" He said, "Vicious White Kids." I said, "Well, why didn't you sign us?" And he said, "Well, he was all too out of it." She was kind of, I couldn't really argue with that.
I thought that was a good interview with Glenn Matlock, where it was so interesting, where he said the record company executive said that that was the most exciting thing that Glenn Matlock has done. So, but yeah, it was a really good gig. So I got there. I didn't see Blondie there, but I'm sure there could have been lots of famous musicians that came to check out Sid Vicious. So this was his first ever solo singing engagement. So it was a big deal. So I'm sure there was probably lots of people there. Steve and Paul could have been there. Johnny could have been there. I doubt he was there, but he could have been. So I got there kind of early. The doors hadn't even opened yet, and I was standing outside with the crowd. And one person I did see was Debbie Juvenile. And to me, she was famous because she was a member of the Bromley contingent. And I'll put a photo here where she's at the bottom there sitting on Johnny. So she was famous to me because she was one of their early fans, and she worked at Seditionaries. And I'll show a photo here. This is a photo I took when I was at Seditionaries, and that's her answering the phone. I just thought she was so cute. She was such a cute punk girl. So she was the only one that I saw that I thought, oh, there's somebody kind of famous. I'll show a picture here just so you can see what I looked like at the time. My hair was it was kind of short, maybe like an inch or two long. I was dyeing it black back then. It was a little shorter than I had it when I saw the Sex Pistols 6 months before. And I'm wearing a sweater here from Seditionaries. I used to have 2 sweaters from Seditionaries, but unfortunately I sold them like 20 years ago because I got a kind of crazy offer from an LA clothing dealer. And I'm sure they're worth much more today, but anyway, I used to have 2 sweaters from Seditionary. So that's a photo of me there. I'm a little chunky because as I said, I used to have an eating disorder. Didn't have it anymore. Once I moved to London, I was just fine. But anyway, so the show, it's so interesting when you compare how shows are today, because there is an audio recording of the show, and I have an album, and I'll show that in a minute, of the show, but there's no video of it at all, which is just amazing to me. I mean, this was Sid's first singing engagement, and his first solo engagement, and also there's very few photos too. I'll show a photo here that I just saw recently on Facebook. I didn't bring a camera, I should have, but back then cameras were kind of big and bulky, and it'd be kind of unusual to be carrying a camera around, but I wish I did. But here's a photo that I just saw recently on Facebook a few months ago, and you can see me in the front. I'll kind of zero in. I highlighted where my arm is, and I still kind of extend my arm today. If I like a show, I kind of put my arm up, but that's me right front and center with right in front of Sid there, and you can see my hair is black and short. And then I'll show another photo here, different shot of you can see Nancy there, Nancy Spungen on stage, and then I'll show some other a couple other photos here that I was able to find, as well as a backstage photo that I found. I didn't go backstage, but I found this photo, and I'll show that. So yeah, there was very few photos, very few at all to sort of remember the show, and no video. But I do have this album, and I'll show it if anybody is interested in buying it. I don't know, maybe you can get it online. I found this in a Palm Springs record store, Palm Springs, California, and it says the Sid Vicious Experience up there with the date, and that's a picture of him. It's probably a glare with the plastic, and then there's a photo on the back there. So that's cool. When I found this, I thought, oh my God, even though it was like $50, I thought, oh, I have to get it since I was at the show. And so it's good because it kind of jogs my memory. In the beginning of the video, I have Come On Everybody, and that's an old 50s song, an Eddie Cochran song. And he started the set with that. He only did 9 songs, so it wasn't a real long set. And then he did Stepping Stone, which I thought was great because the Sex Pistols used to cover Stepping Stone, and I always loved the Monkees. And I always loved the fact that the Sex Pistols did such a great cover of Stepping Stone. So that was his second song. And then he did No Lip, which is an old, actually I don't know who, I know the song, but I forget what band made it famous. But I know the Sex Pistols used to do No Lip as well. And then he did I Want to Be Your Dog, of course, the Stooges song, I Want to Be Your Dog. And I think that's when Nancy Spungen came out. I don't think she sang backup the whole set, because I remember her coming out and him saying, you know, I'm dedicating this to my honey, Nancy, and then she came out. So I think she came out just for I Want to Be Your Dog, and then maybe stayed for the rest of the set, I don't know. And then he did Belson Was a Gas, which I was so happy about because that was a song, as I said in my Sex Pistols video, that was a new song that the Sex Pistols were doing on the American tour. And so Sid sang that, so that was really exciting. And then he did Chatterbox, which is a Johnny Thunder song, and then Tight Pants, which is of course a Stooges song, and then he did Something Else, the Eddie Cochran song, and then he ended with My Way. So I don't know, I can't remember how long the show was. Maybe it was an hour, maybe it was 45 minutes. I don't remember exactly. It seemed like it went by so quickly. So and it's funny things that you remember. And speaking of Glenn Matlock, but I remember when they first came out, and I looked over at Glenn Matlock, and he was like wiggling his tongue at me, and it was I don't know, it was probably a silly thing to mention, but you know, you just remember these things, and he like wiggled his tongue at me, and I thought, oh my God, that's weird. And then so I kind of looked away, and then I looked back again, and he did it again, and I just thought, oh my God, you know, some guys like, you know, wiggle their tongues at girls, and I just thought it was, I'm just recalling what I was thinking, and I remember thinking, God, maybe Johnny was right, maybe he wasn't that cool, because I can't imagine like Sid or even Steve Jones, who loves women, or Johnny doing that. So it was funny. It's like the first couple songs I didn't want to look at him because he kept doing this tongue thing at me. So, but anyway, but then when I looked again a couple songs later, he didn't. But anyway, that's probably a silly thing to mention. But he's a great bass player, very different from Sid. I think he plays with his fingers, and Sid was more like a Dee Dee Ramone style. So I'll play, there's no video, so I'll just play a little bit from this album, and it's, like I said, it's a great album, and I love this picture of Sid here. That's when he, that's in the album as well. That's when he was going to a David Bowie concert in 1973. He looks so young. So, and then that's the other side of it. So it's just great. I'm so glad that I have it as a memento of that show. So I'll play a couple songs that they did. I Want to Be Your Dog and Belson Was a Gas. And I have no video from the show, so I probably will do a video from when he performed in New York, because there is a very little bit of video available of him singing in New York. So this is Sid doing I Want to Be Your Dog, and Belson Was a Gas.
This one's dedicated to my honey, Nancy.
so that was I Want to Be Your Dog, and Belson Was a Gas. Those were the, Belson Was a Gas was the fifth song that they did, and then after that they did 4 more songs, ending with My Way. And I don't know if they did an encore. My Way might have been the encore. That part I can't really remember exactly. I know the audio is really bad in that recording. You can't hear Nancy singing backup vocals. Maybe they had her microphone turned off, I don't know. But that audio could have just been an audio from a fan that happened to have a portable tape recorder. It's still amazing to me that that show has so little documentation on it. No, just the audio, no video, and just two or three photos. The video clip I have there is not from the show, because there's no videos from the show. That's from when he did some gigs in New York at Max's Kansas City, and I don't know how many gigs he did. I think it was 2 or 3, but I don't know. But you can see that's Jerry Nolan there, and Arthur. I think it's Arthur Kane from the Dolls on bass. I know in New York he had Mick Jones on guitar for at least one of the shows. So that little video clip wasn't from Vicious White Kids. That was from New York, where he played. Once they moved there. I thought it was a great show. I thought his voice was strong. He has a good voice. So much charisma, of course. I mean, Sid had so much charisma. But I will say that I missed seeing him and Johnny on stage together. I don't think I've ever seen 2 people on stage with so much charisma, and they played off each other so well, because Johnny just had that great stare, and then Sid was, sometimes kind of comical, sometimes kind of menacing. I mean, the 2 of them were just amazing together on stage. So I will say I missed seeing that dynamic, but he had a lot of charisma on his own. He seemed more, I will say he seemed kind of more somber or more serious than he was when I saw him in the Sex Pistols. He could have been nervous, because it's a big deal to go from being a bass player to all of a sudden being a lead singer. I mean, that's quite a big transition. I mean, when he was with Johnny was the one who had to take the brunt of people yelling at them and saying things on the American tour, Johnny took most of the spotlight. But it's a big deal to go from that to being the center stage on your own. So maybe he was nervous, but he seemed a little kind of more serious and than he was in the Sex Pistols. Like in the Sex Pistols, I remember, this is something I forgot to mention on the U.S. tour. I think it was in Dallas, and after they came out, and people were already like saying, "You guys are awful," in stronger language than that, and throwing things at them. I remember Sid said, "We're the best band in the world," and then he stopped. He had good comedic timing, and then he said, "Except the Eagles, they're better than us." So I just thought that was so funny, because I can't imagine him listening to the Eagles, and he got a chuckle out of his own joke too. And I remember I was laughing in the audience. I thought I don't know why that's funny, but it was just a funny thing that he said. But he was great. He has a lot of charisma, obviously. I remember at one point, and you hear it on the audio, not the song I played, but sometime between songs, he said, if you want to tell me to F off, you better do it up here, or something like that. So maybe someone yelled something, but the crowd, it was an English crowd. I mean, they loved him. I thought he got a really good reception. So, and I really, I will be honest, I was lamenting he wasn't on stage with Johnny anymore, but I thought it was a really good show. Obviously, he has a lot of stage presence. So after the show, the lights came on, and because I was in the front, I had a leather jacket when I came to the show. It was like a lightweight kind of a girly leather jacket. And it was August, and maybe the club was hot. I don't remember exactly, but I was getting hot, and I took off the leather jacket, and I had stuffed it somewhere under the stage, like in a crevice or something. And when the lights came on, I looked for my leather jacket, and I couldn't. It wasn't there. And I thought, oh my God, someone stole my leather jacket. I was kind of upset. And so then I went to. As everyone was leaving, I went to the bartender and I said, I think my leather jacket was stolen, but can you check maybe, because I thought maybe, it was trampled on the ground and someone turned it into lost and found. I mean, I couldn't believe someone stole my jacket right under my nose, but that's what happened. And so, but I thought, well, you never know, maybe someone turned it into lost and found. And so I don't know if you've ever had lost something at a club, but they don't run and take care of, your lost item right away. So I had to wait around for the bartender to I think to close up, and then he went and either asked the manager or found out, if there was a leather jacket that was turned in. And so I ended up waiting around. And so that losing my leather jacket actually turned out to be a good thing, because if I hadn't lost my leather jacket, I would have left the club with everybody else, and I wouldn't have had a chance to chat with Sid and Nancy. So I'm waiting there for a while. I can't remember how long. And then the bartender came back finally, and he said, no, I'm sorry, nothing was turned in. And I said, okay. So I was getting ready to leave, and by this time the club was almost empty, and I turn and I look, and there I see Sid and Nancy, and they're just sitting. She was actually standing, and he was sitting like on a bar stool. I think he had a beer in front of him, and he was sitting on a bar stool, just kind of maybe a little hunched over and just kind of staring at the wall. It was kind of like if this was the wall, it was like a little counter where people put their drinks, and he was facing the wall, and she was standing there beside him, kind of just facing out. And so I thought, oh my God, there's Sid Vicious, and there's Nancy, and no one was talking to them. And I thought, that's funny, but there was hardly anybody left in the club by that time. And so I walked over to him right away, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, hi. I said, I just want to tell you that was just a great show. I can't remember what word I used, but I think I said great or brilliant. I said that was just a brilliant show. You were fantastic. I loved it. And I probably will get a little emotional here, but I remember he looked up at me, and he's like sitting, and I'm standing there, and he just turned to the side and he said, yeah, like really? And I thought at that moment, I thought, wow, I think he's insecure. I don't think he thought he was that great. I don't know. I just will never forget him looking at me and saying, yeah, or yeah, like really? And I just said, yeah. I said, you were great. I said, I loved your version of I Want to Be Your Dog, and I said, I thought you did a great version of Belson and Stepping Stone. I said, I thought it was really a great show. And so I think I made him smile. I hope I made him feel good. I think, when I saw him, it brings back memories that, he was just a kid. He was just 20, I guess, at that point. And, I think he was insecure. I don't think he actually knew how good that he was, or how special he was. And so I asked him, the next thing I asked him, I said, are you playing any more dates? Because I thought they might play some more dates. I thought this was going to be a band that was going to, go on and do more things. And that's when he says, no, he said, we're moving to New York. And I don't think he said when they're moving to New York, but that's when I found out they were moving to New York. And then I said, I'm from the U.S. I said, I don't really know New York. I'm from L.A. I said, in fact, I saw you on the American tour. And then he looked at me, and I couldn't believe it. He says, yeah. He says, I remember you. And I still can't believe that, but maybe because I was dancing in front of him most of the time at the Tulsa show, I don't know, but he said that he said that he remembered me, and I said, yeah. I said that was a great tour. And then he said, what are you doing over here? And I said, I'm working at Top Shop, with a big smile on my face because I liked my job at Top Shop. And then he said, and I think I made him laugh because then at that point he said, you came over here for Top Shop, and I said no. I said I came over here to just experience London and to see some shows. And then I don't remember. I think we talked a little more, but I can't. I remember the Top Shop thing the most, and then because he got a kind of a laugh out of that. And then I said no, I just came over here to kind of experience London. And then I think at that point I might have said something like, oh, I love London, and I love being here. And I might have mentioned maybe some other shows that I'd gone to. I don't know. And then at that point, she must have heard, us talking because she was right there beside him. And then at that point, she kind of dominated the conversation, and she said, London, she goes, London is shit compared to New York. And I just thought, whoa, okay. I don't know New York. Maybe it's much better than London. I kind of doubt it, but maybe it is. I don't know. And so then she said, what else? She was much louder than he was, and she said, I know. She said, I've already booked. Oh, Sid's a big star over there. She said, she goes, Sid's a big star over there, and I've already booked us some really big shows over there, and he's going to make a lot more money than he's going to make in this town, or she might have said in this shit town. I can't remember, but the gist of what she was saying was that like London was nothing compared to New York, and New York it was going to be much better, and he was going to make more money. And I thought at that point, I thought two things at that point when she started talking. I thought, gosh, she's acting like she's his manager, because I thought Malcolm was still the manager. That's what I thought. And then I also thought, it's funny, she said we, and so I thought maybe she's going to be in his band permanently. And I thought of her, and I'd already read negative stuff about her, but just in my brief encounter, I thought she's the kind of girl that I felt was using him to get famous on her own. And it's funny that he does the song Stepping Stone, because that's the way I thought of her. I thought, oh, she's using him like a stepping stone. I thought if he doesn't watch out, she's going to be singing lead, and he's going to be singing backup at their next show. But anyway, she really sounded like she was his manager, and she was taking over his career, and he was going to make a lot more money, and London's nothing compared to New York. And then I said something like, because I did like some New York bands, and I said, and I just, I wanted to be positive because I didn't know New York. I'd never been there. And I just said something like, oh, I like Blondie, and I like the Heartbreakers, because I did like those two bands from New York. And then she had to tell me, oh, I'm good friends with Johnny Thunders, and he and we've known each other for years. And she said some other stuff, and I'm surprised I remember that much, but she said some other stuff, and I can't remember. But the gist of it was she was talking about how she was very well connected in New York. So that was it. It was a short conversation, and like I said, once she entered the conversation, I don't think he was going to get many words in. So she pretty much dominated it. And my impression of her was she was kind of a girl that was kind of trying too hard. She probably thought you got to be tough and you have to be on heroin to be cool. I don't know, but she just sounded to me like someone who kind of had to one up you in the conversation and was kind of trying too hard, But she was just a kid too, We were all just kids. So that was my brief brief meeting with Sid and Nancy, and I still to this day I just feel really good that and again, I don't want to get emotional, but that I feel really good that I told him how I thought he was so great, because I think he was insecure. I don't think he knew how great he was. So I'll play a brief clip here of the band on their thoughts on Nancy, and then I'll continue my video with the rest of the night, which there's more to tell. I actually saw 2 more Sex Pistols that night.
My nose is broken, I'm keeping them on.
And she showed up with Sid. I was thinking, who the fuck is this cunt? This is a horrible person. It was like the weirdest thing. I never felt such a negative energy from someone. It was just a dark cloud with this bird. And I fucking hated her.
First time I came across Nancy, I think Steve was shagging her in the toilet. I didn't like her.
Nancy was a hooker that was on the coattails of the New York Dolls. And I actually introduced her to Sid, and shame on me.
In New York, I was dancing without any clothes on. You used to go down to the guys and dance in front of them and then get tips off them. When you do a little hand job, you know, for $10. Then when it's a fuck, I just, you know, did it, you know. There wasn't really anything to it. I just give good blowjobs.
And I'll rip your balls off.
I read the first Sex Pistols review. She was shit, and I said, I gotta get over that. I wanted to see something exciting.
Nancy, as his heroin dealer stroke girlfriend, was pumping him up with gear every chance she could get.
He didn't like me because I was a junkie. He tried to keep me and Sid apart for months.
Everyone knows when a bird starts poking their nose into a rock and roll band, that it's suicidal. Because that's when he really started getting fucked up and not caring about playing. I didn't want anything to do with her.
We did everything to get rid of Nancy that was physically possible. I even dangled her out of a window one night by her ankles.
All right, so that was kind of a funny video. I can understand their anger, because I think if Nancy hadn't come along, the band might still be together, because I think one of the main reasons they broke up was because of Sid's drug addiction. They just couldn't continue. So, but I think that's so funny. I love in that video where Johnny says he dangled her out of a window once. It's like, God, that must have been some night. So I left the Electric Ballroom, and I started walking, and this is kind of, I don't know if it's embarrassing, but I'm just going to tell how I ended the night. I didn't have my leather jacket, so I'm walking the streets of London with a t-shirt on, and but it really kind of affected me when Sid said that they were moving to New York, because believe it or not, I still kind of held out hope that the band might get together again or reform, because they were all living in London. They were all still there, and the band hadn't broken up. They hadn't been broken up that long. And if I can use the analogy of like, if you're a kid and your parents like break up and maybe the husband moves out, and you're thinking, well, you know, I think they'll get back together. They just gotta, that was just a moment in time. They've just gotta kind of, you know, just settle down and realize what they're giving up, and then they'll work it out and get back together. And that's what I thought with the Sex Pistols. I really held out hope that that they might get back together, even with Sid's drug addiction. I thought, you know, you never know. They could, maybe he could kick the habit, or maybe he and Nancy would break up and they would get back together. So it really kind of upset me that he said they were moving to New York, because I thought, oh, that's not good, because she's from the East Coast. He's probably going to stay there, and the Sex Pistols aren't going to break. They're not going to get back together. So with that thought, I started walking towards where Steve and Paul lived. They shared a flat on Bell Street, I think it was 93 Bell Street. And how I knew the address was that this was before the days of Google, obviously, that Malcolm used to have his office in this flat. And so I think the address was sort of public knowledge. And before he got his Glitter Best management going, he worked out of a flat on Bell Street. And then when he got a proper office, Steve and Paul took over the residence, and that's where they were living. So I start walking towards Steve and Paul's flat, and my thought was, and I don't know if I was, if I was thinking too much, if I was thinking clearly, maybe I was, I don't know, but my thought was, gosh, that Sid's moving to New York, and maybe they don't know he's moving to New York, and maybe if I tell him he's moving to New York, maybe he'll call up Sid, and there might be hope that the band would get together. So I was still hopeful that the band would get back together, and so it didn't sound good with Sid moving to New York. So I walked to Sid, and I walked to Steve and Paul's flat, and which I think was in central London or close to central London. And so I'm sitting outside. I'll show what the street looks like. It was a narrow street. So I'm sitting like on the curb outside their flat, and I'm sitting there, and I don't know for how long. I knew it didn't look like they were home. I looked up, and the I think it was 2 stories, and it all looked dark. And so I thought, well, they're either asleep or they're out. So I thought, well, they're probably out. It's only, I don't know, midnight or something. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, yeah, I just, I knew that they were friendly because I had talked to them in Tulsa, and I thought, well, I'll just say something like, I just want to let you know that, Sid's moving to New York, and, if you did want to get the band together, maybe you should call him, so I don't know, it was crazy thoughts of a hopeful fan. And I sat there for a while, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. And then I really started to feel stupid. I just thought, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I thought, they probably already know Sid's moving to New York, and maybe they don't want anything to do with Sid anymore anyway. And Johnny doesn't want anything to do with Malcolm. At that point, I thought, if the band were going to get together, they should probably look for another manager. As much as I liked Malcolm when he was managing the band, I didn't like him so much after the band broke up. I thought that single with Ronnie Biggs, that Train Robber, I thought that was a little silly, and I think they called it a Sex Pistols single. I mean, I thought, how can you have a Sex Pistols single without Johnny? And then I read that Malcolm was spending money on making a movie, and I never liked the title of that movie, The Rock and Roll Swindle, and so I knew he was working on that, and it sounded like he was spending the band's money on a film, and so I just thought, I knew Johnny hated him, and I thought, well, they're not going to get back together with Malcolm in the picture, but I still held out hope. So I'm sitting there, but after about 20 minutes, I just started to feel like really dumb, and so I get up and I start walking away, and I cross the street, and literally, I'd only left their place, about 30 seconds before, and I left because I thought, I might scare them. They might think I'm like a stalker or a groupie, and I'll get into an uncomfortable situation. So I walked away, and I thought, oh, this is silly. And so literally, I'm walking away. I'm only about 30 seconds. Down the street, and around the corner comes a cab, and sure enough, the cab gets out right in front of their place, and I'm across the street, and they can't see me because it's dark, and I remember there was like scaffolding across the street, so I'm standing there in the dark, and I see them get out of the cab, and they're laughing and talking, and they had a couple of girls with them, and they go into the flat, and I think at that moment I knew that the Sex Pistols were over. I thought it's over. They're not going to get back together. It really kind of struck me at that moment. I thought, here I am walking around distraught because Sid's moving to New York, and the band's probably never going to get back together. And rightly so. Steve and Paul are out having a good time, and I don't know what they thought in their quiet moments, but they're out having a good time. They're probably already getting other music projects together, and they're moving on, and Sid's moving on too. He's literally moving on. He's doing a solo career and moving to New York, and Johnny was really moving on. I mean, he was already into his band PIL. They were rehearsing, probably recording, getting ready for their new debut and their first album. So I thought, you know what? I thought it's time, as painful as it is, it's time for me to move on. And with that on my mind, I started walking down Bell Street and turned a corner and looked for a night bus to get me home. So that was the end of my night. I hope you enjoyed the reminiscing on the 45th anniversary of the sad death of Sid Vicious, and my recollection of meeting him and seeing him perform his solo show. So thanks for watching, and I'm going to end the video with his video of My Way. I always loved that video of My Way. I thought he looked great in that white jacket. So thanks for watching. Until the next time, I'll be seeing ya.
J'ai le grand honneur de vous présenter pour la première fois en France, Sid Vicious.